Welcome back. A bill to grant voting rights to diasporans is what we're going to be looking at this point. The Nigerians in the diaspora. This bill has passed its second reading in the National Assembly, marking a significant step towards expanding electoral participation. The bill, which seeks to allow Nigerians living abroad to vote in national elections, has garnered widespread support from lawmakers and the public alike. During the second reading, proponents argued that granting the diaspora the right to vote would strengthen Nigeria's democracy by ensuring that its global citizens have a voice in shaping the country's future. The bill's passage brings it closer to becoming law, with further deliberations and revisions expected in the coming sessions. Now, to discuss this is a legal practitioner, Elvis Asia. Good morning and welcome to the program, Barrister.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the program this morning.
Okay. This bill to allow diasporans to vote has passed second reading. What's your take?
Well, it's a welcomed development in my view. Nigerians in diaspora contribute substantially to the local economy in terms of the remittances that they make daily basis to the country. And apart beyond that, if you look at the current trend, the current Japan syndrome, where best of us are all leaving the country due to the harsh economic realities faced today in the country, it will be good to build that national consciousness on those who are living. That, even though they are living, they're still part of the Nigerian experience, they're still part of the Nigerian system, and that they still have a role to play in developing the country, not just in terms of the remittances they make, or in terms of their political participation that contributes in our developmental process. And this is not surprising. I mean, there are over 140 countries in the world that allows their citizens in diaspora to vote, of course, with different obligations to suit the peculiar circumstances of each country. So it's not a new thing. It's a common practice globally.
Yeah, it might be a common practice globally, but I don't know if you've had insights into the provisions of this bill. What are they going to do? How are they going to do it? Here in Nigeria, we've not been able to get it right in the electronic voting. I don't know the style they are going to use in diaspora. Will they be doing option A4? Will they be voting and then sending the results to us? Will they be transmitting it live? Will INEC have branch offices in all the countries or in the embassies of these countries that will be voting? I don't know. Do you have any idea what the provisions are so that Nigerians can also know?
Well, I haven't seen the bill itself to review specifically what the proposals are in terms of the mechanisms of getting this done.
Exactly, that's what I'm. Is it out of place at this point for the bill to go through public hearing so that we can get to know what the provisions are and also contribute? Because we want the process of election, even here in Nigeria, to be seamless and better than what it is now. Can't we contribute as a people to this bill?
This is an important bill. I want to believe that there will definitely be public hearings, not just in Nigeria. There should be some public hearings even amongst those of Nigerians that are affected abroad. Mm-hmm. We should be able to make input and make suggestions on the best approach that will be taken. You are right about the current electoral problems we have in terms of the integrity of the process, in terms of the transparency of the process. And so it's a legitimate worry that, if you now want to do it globally, how do you intend to do it? But from the experience of other countries, there are different options that can be taken. In some countries, they do what they call mail-in ballots. So you can mail in your ballots In some countries, you go to the embassy to, do the voting. In a few countries like Estonia and others, they do online voting, So there are various options that can be taken, but you need to find an option that will be suitable for the Nigerian experience, particularly considering our problems of transparency with the electoral process.
Well, mailing is out of the question. If experiences of when we had NIPOs are anything to go by, we know how many valuables went missing, whether it was money, whether it was jewelry, anything that went into the envelope. You are not 100% sure that you can get it. Even 50% sure, it's not possible. So mailing may not be the option. And then electronics, if we cannot get it right back home, I don't know how we can get it right there, and how those votes will be transmitted to Nigeria, I just don't understand. Like I said, maybe it will be the Morrissey style, where we'll have an open ballot and then they announce the votes there at that polling unit. I don't just know. At what point should a bill go for public hearing? Is it after it has passed the third reading in the National Assembly, or before it even goes through the National Assembly? Shouldn't we have input before the National Assembly decides on the final take on any bill?
I think the tradition or the convention in the legislative process is that when a bill is referred to the appropriate committee to look at it, it is that committee that now engages with the members of the public. So now that the bill has been referred to the committee, it is expected that this committee, as part of their work, will be to convey public hearings, both physical public hearings, virtual public hearings, so that our people in the diaspora can make comments and be able to contribute. So I think it's at this point that this engagement would be made. And you are right, this engagement is important. And again, it's also important that we do a much more comprehensive review of the current electoral system. For example, do we want to allow electronic voting, for example? Because if you really want to make this work, having that may be a plus. And so you want to have a much more comprehensive bill. So this committee should be able to do that, engage all the stakeholders, engage with INEC. INEC should be able to make representation on what they can do in terms of, because they are the ones that are charged with the duty of managing the process. And so they should be able to make comments on what they can do in terms of making this work. And then, of course, you also engage with all the political groups in the country, civil society organizations, of course, anybody that is interested in making contributions to how this should be done. It's upon a very thorough and detailed review of these, contributions that we can come to, and the committee can come to an agreement on what is suitable, and then make that recommendation to the House for passage. So, yes, you are right. This is something that should be widely debated. This should be something that should be widely, considered because there are also constitutional angles to it. For example, if you look at Section 72 of the Constitution, for elections into the House of Representatives, the Section 77, Subsection 2, provides that you have to be a resident in a country to be able to vote. And if you look at the presidential elections, you look at the threshold for declaring the winner in the presidential election, which requires that you should have, you're looking at the states. So those who are voting in the diaspora, for example, which state are you going to attribute those votes to, and all of that. So there are very fundamental issues. I don't really know the extent to which they are going. If it's just to amend the Electoral Act, they may have run into constitutional problems, because there will be need for constitutional amendment in order to make this work. So, which means, beyond the National Assembly, the state houses of assembly will have to make inputs before this process can go through, and so that we can have a process that will not be subject to legal challenge and all of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, are they not neglecting some very critical aspects, because the Electoral Act needs to be tweaked a little bit. The Constitution itself needs to be looked at for it to accommodate these innovations. But you've just answered that there's need for that to be done, and I don't know what they're doing right now. I wish I had more information about what the provisions of this bill are. But if you were to advise, we need reforms in the electoral process. What other reforms would you suggest if we are going to look at the Electoral Act again, just because we have this opportunity of a diaspora votes that will give us the opportunity to look at the Electoral Act again? So what are these reforms that you think can be injected more into the Electoral Act and even the Constitution to accommodate the innovation?
I think the most important one is electronic transmission of results from polling units. In 2023, you will recall that it was the promise that INEC made in that regard that got so many young people across the country to be involved in the 2023 elections, and they were all at polling units trying to secure their votes and all that. But it was the fallout of that in terms of what happened while we were asleep. INEC, took a different decision, and the court endorsed it, that they could do that. That has created a lot of apathy, and which is affecting us all other elections across the country. If you look at the elections that were held in Edo, in Odo, you see that a lot of people didn't come out to vote because people don't trust the integrity of the process. So we need to ensure that electronic voting is institutionalized, it is made mandatory, and all of that. Then we also need to see whether we can do electronic voting, in some respect, because that would be necessary in order to ensure that those in diaspora are probably able to vote, or those who are out of the country at the time of elections, who were already registered in the country, are able to vote. So we need to look at that. And then we need to make it mandatory for INEC to engage, because there's already a provision in the Electoral Act that empowers INEC to do civic education. But INEC is not really doing much of that. So we need to make it mandatory. There should be a dedicated chapter that is very comprehensive, that details the responsibility of INEC in reaching out to people and getting the people to really understand the values and importance of elections. So you can't be electing people by 10% of registered voters. That is not a democracy. So for you to have a democracy, there should be at least the majority of people who are registered to vote should be able to vote. And so we need to get to people through civic education, and if possible, we can also even make voting mandatory for a certain age bracket. Those, if you are registered to vote, you are able to vote, you are not sick, you should be mandated to vote, so that we can have, because when you have just 10% or 20%, electing governors, electing House of Rep members, you're going to have run into problems. And then for local government election, which is really where you have the arm of government that's closest to the people, we need to fine tune it. This system where the governors just write results in the name of election for local government elections, we need to stop it. We probably need to amend the Constitution. Yes, the Constitution makes provision that the houses of assemblies of the states have the constitutional power to make laws, regulations for the existence, for the administration of local governments. And in that wise, many of them have made laws about having state independent electoral commissions, which the governors have been using to just write results. And I mean, that's the reality. They are writing results. Then no election is going on at local government level. And so we probably need to make it national. If the local government councils are part of the national structure for the administration of the country, then there should be also a national way in which these elections are conducted, so as to remove the capacity of governors and other people within the state to just manipulate the process and put people. So I believe that some of the areas that we need to look at in order to ensure that there is some integrity, some transparency in the way and manner INEC does some of the things. And then we need to remove discretions on the basis of on the part of INEC to just change the rules. You can't change the rules midway. Some of the rules that has to do with collation of results, they must be made mandatory. INEC should ensure they are transmitted electronically, and then they compare it with the manual transmission. And if there is any discrepancy, if there's any issue between the two, the immediate transmission that was done electronically should prevail. And I think we should do that. And if we do that, you see that just like a lot of people did in 2023 when they were trying to protect their votes, you see that much more the younger people will come out to vote, and in the hope that they are able to, whilst manning their polling units, able to ensure that whatever is transmitted there is the right result.
Okay, well, wonderful suggestions there. I'm just concerned about one of your suggestions, which is making it mandatory for people of voting age to vote. Will it not trample on the rights of these people? Because you also have a right not to vote for anybody, even though that is bad enough. But wouldn't it be trampling on the rights of people if you say if you compel them to vote?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the Constitution. The Constitution is what determines what the rights are. There are countries where voting is mandatory. It's not. There are countries where voting is mandatory, but you create exceptions. There are exceptional situations. There are people that don't want to vote on the basis of religion, for example. You can create exceptional situations. People who are old, people who are probably sick or whatever it is. There should be some. You can create exceptions, but I mean, your civic duty is mandatory. It should be mandatory. You have a responsibility to the state. It's not just enough to say you have freedom. You have, these things are not, absolute. Your rights are not absolute. You have a right to ensure the proper functioning of our democracy as a Nigerian citizen, and that, can't be enforced by the Constitution. And once you have that in the Constitution, you can't say it's a violation of any right. It is the right that you have is to the extent to which the Constitution has granted it. And don't forget that these rights are already provisions in a way in the provision of the Constitution that you cannot enforce. The directive principles of state policy, your civic duties and all of that. This civic duty can be made to be mandatory in a way, but like I said, with exceptions that takes care of peculiarities of some people. But generally, people should be made to participate in the electoral process. And I don't see anything wrong in compelling that, while taking care of the exceptional situations that may the peculiarities of some people, like I said earlier. Well, I don't see anything wrong with it, with the Constitution mandates.
Well, wrong or not, we are at a desperate moment where we need our recruitment process to be as seamless as possible, to be as good as possible, to be as participatory as possible, and to be trustworthy as possible. So we could suggest a lot of things and all that. We do hope that that section of our life will be sanitized so much so that we can have credible elections, free, fair, and credible elections in the coming days. Well, we'd like to thank you, Barrister Elvis, for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you join us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful day. That was Barrister Elvis Asia, a legal practitioner, who joined us to discuss the fact that the Diaspora voting bill has passed the second reading in the National Assembly. And let's see how the coming days are and what the provisions of this bill are, because we are interested in that, and we are interested in the process that brings leaders to us. This is how we wrap it up on the show this morning. It was a pleasure being with you. We'd like to say thank you for being a part of the show this morning. Bye for now. My name is Nyamgul Agaji.